Hello everyone, I'm back at it again, and today we're at my fly tying bench, and I'm going to talk about how to replace single dressed hooks that are commonly found on the back of Castmasters, Hopkins spoons, stuff like that, but it also, the same kind of procedure applies to the big single hooks on big wooden plugs, or tying a flag on the back instead of having a hook there at all on some of those big wooden plugs. Same basic procedure for teasers. Yeah, you could do a lot with this bucktail jigs, certainly. But right now we're looking at a Castmaster, and it has a single dressed bucktail hook on the back, and I've replaced this before, but you know, after a whole bunch of fish, they kind of chew it down to nothing. Some of these are worse than others, but these guys, these really got shredded. There's really not much bucktail left there. There's a lot of bare hook showing. That one's the same. So I just kind of toss these into a pile when they get worn out, and then I do a bunch of them all at once. Here's a hook I found. I don't really remember where I found it, but I just tossed it into the pile to dress it up later. It's a little bigger than the hook that's on that Castmaster right now. So let's get into it. The first thing I like to do is to put a new edge, a new point on some of these hooks. And the way I do it, and there's a lot of ways to do it, is I use a metal file, tried to say. This one I think is called a bastard file. I didn't come up with the name, it's just what they called it. But a lot of metal files will work. Something pretty heavy duty. This one has a fine side and kind of a rougher side. I only use the fine side. I'm not really trying to remove that much metal. I'm just trying to put a new edge on it. And, you know, you could use other hook sharpeners. You could use diamond files. You could use all kinds of stuff. Whatever you like to sharpen hooks. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to have to do this again after the fish beat up the hooks again. So I'm just trying to put a new edge on it, put a new point on it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I know for a fact I'm going to have to do this again. And yeah, usually I go for some kind of triangular shape. And it only takes a few minutes. I'm testing the sharpness with my index finger to see if it catches the skin. And yeah, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just takes a few seconds, and I like to do it before putting on the new bucktail. So my last hook was still attached to the Castmaster, and the first thing to do is to get it free. And the next thing I'm going to do is get some of that old thread and bucktail off, and to do that I need a razor blade or a utility knife. The utility knife is nice because there's just more surface area for your hands to grab, but a razor blade will work just fine too, or a pocket knife. You just want to make sure to slice away from yourself so you don't cut your fingers wide open. Those utility blades and razor blades are pretty sharp things. The first one I think is the one I did, and I have a base of super glue down there, and then I have super glue on top of the thread wrap, so it's really on there well. Some of the ones from, you know, that you get stock with the Castmasters or Hopkins, they don't take as much care as somebody tying them at home would. You know, they're trying to tie them in like a mass production kind of a way. And I don't know what they seal them with, maybe just like nail polish or something. But it comes right off, just falls off really easily. But there's a few threads that are left behind, and I'm just going to try to clean those up the best I can. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm probably spending a little bit more time on this than I should, because once you do the the new thread wraps and put new bucktail on it, it's going to cover up all that old stuff. So don't worry about it being perfect. You could also do this same thing with new hooks too. I'm just, I don't know, maybe being a little too frugal here and using old hooks again and again. But for my purposes, it doesn't really matter. You know, for bluefish and stripers that I'm catching, it's not important to me to use fresh stuff. And these hooks are still perfectly good for my purposes, so I'm just reusing them again and again and again until, I don't know, I get cut off or broken off. And these hooks have already, I don't know how many fish I've caught on them, hundreds. Cleaning up my mess there a little bit, putting away the blades so I don't stick myself. And we're finally ready to stick a hook in a vise. Try to adjust the camera a little bit so you get a better view. But if you don't have a vise, with this size hook, you could use a pair of vice grip pliers and maybe like a C-clamp and a book and a workbench or something like that. The bobbin I'm using is just your standard cheap bobbin. They used to be a few bucks. They might be a few bucks more now because of inflation. But just the regular standard old bobbin that you can get in any fly shop or online is perfectly fine. I'm using a little threading tool to make threading the bobbin a little bit easier. And I will get everything into frame in a second. It's hard to do multiple things at once, you know, trying to shoot a video while you're tying hooks and threading the bobbin. But we will get there in just a few seconds. Just bear with me for this part. So what I like to use for tying up these dressed single hooks or bucktails or teasers is this big fly thread. It's super tough stuff. You can get it in red, which I have here, or white or chartreuse. They might have a few other colors, but those are the three colors that I use. So the first step is just to put down a simple thread base. This is how you would start most any fly or teaser. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I just wrap up and then wrap back over itself to lock it down. And then to really lock it down, I coat everything with some super glue. And so that just makes sure that nothing slides later after a whole bunch of fish. And it keeps the bucktail just lasting longer. It also, when I'm first getting going, it keeps the bucktail where I put it on the hook. And it just makes for an overall much more durable and stronger dressed single hook. The bucktail I use was given to me by a friend, and I'm still running through the original bag. I had a mix of brown and white, and I separated the brown from the white, and this is mostly all white stuff. If there's a few fibers of brown in there, it doesn't matter at all. The fish aren't going to turn their noses up because there's a few brown hairs in there. And I'm just trying to roughly size it up. Might be a little bit more than I need, but as I'm tying it, all the loose fibers and hairs are going to come out. You'll see as we get into it. So it's okay if it's a little bit thicker at this stage. I'll thin it out by the end. And the procedure for whatever you're going to tie with bucktail is usually pretty similar. I like to start with one big bundle and then split that in half and then split it in half again. So I have these little quarter bundles or parcels. I square off the ends, and then I usually wrap the top first, and then the side, and then the bottom, and then the other side. And then if there's any little gaps or places where the bucktail didn't quite fill in, you can fill that in at the end. Now those hairs are a little bit long. I also need to flip the camera up a little bit more, but basically just a few thread wraps to hold it on, and now that's a much better view. Squaring up the ends. We'll do the bottom. And it's going to look a little bit messy at this stage. And that's okay. By the end, it'll be looking pretty nice. The vise makes everything a little bit easier, so you can rotate that dress single hook. You can do, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, whatever you need, and it just makes everything a little bit easier and faster. Now I'm going to pull out some of those loose fibers that didn't quite get seated yet. Thin it out just a little bit, and we're already looking pretty good. And with some of that loose stuff, I can go over, and I saw a little bit of a little bit of a gap there. And just with what I pulled out from the bucktail, I can fill in that gap. And I'm going to start loose and then start tightening up my wraps, applying a little bit more pressure, and straightening out some things. I've got a little bit of excess fibers near the eye. Those are going to get covered up with thread, so it's not too important, but I just want to clean it up a little bit before I start wrapping up towards the eye. Just so I don't have little fibers poking out everywhere. Now I'm going to finish up the head, make kind of a smooth transition. I've got a little bit more trimming to do, but that's okay. It's not too important at this stage. I'm just trying to wrap it on tightly so those bucktail hairs never come out again. Well, at least as long as the fish let it last. The fly moved a little bit while I was trying to whip finish it, so that's okay. Super glue makes up for a lot of imperfections, but I'm going to do all that again. So to whip finish, you make the number 4, and then you wrap 4 times, at least the way I do it. I'll show you it again. I always do it twice. The number 4, and then wrap 4 times. 2, 3, 4. What that does is basically ties like a nail knot twice on the head of the dress single hook, and that's to keep the tag end of your tying thread from coming undone. I'm going to run my fingers through it some more. I'm almost like combing it out, getting any more of those loose fibers out. Thin it out just a little bit. And the last step is going to be to seal it all up with super glue. I usually stop at super glue, but if you want, you can put, once the super glue dries, you can put like a top coat on it or a nail polish to make it real shiny. For my purposes, I don't really think it matters for the tail end of a Castmaster. Either the fish are going to eat it or they're not, and they're not going to look at the glossiness of the red thread. But you certainly can if you'd like to. It does make it look a little bit nicer. And I just put a liberal coat of super glue all over that red thread. Sometimes I get a little too liberal with the super glue, and I have to dab it with a piece of paper towel. But that's all right. I'd rather have too much and let a little extra soak in than too little and have it come undone. But yeah, that's looking pretty good right there. So what I'm going to do is set that up to dry and then go on to the next one. All right, I got my second big hook in the vise, same procedure. You're going to wrap a little bit of a thread base so you have something to work off of. Trim the tag end. And again, I like to seal everything down, lock everything down with a coat of super glue. It really makes the fly or the dress single hook more durable if you have super glue on the bottom and on the top. Dab away some of that excess there. And then it's going to be the same thing. Take another bunch of bucktail. And I probably have a little bit more than I need there, but I know when I run my fingers through it, it's going to thin it out. So just do the same kind of procedure. Split it in half and then half again. I know roughly how much I want, but if you didn't, you could just hold it up against the hook, see how it looks to you. Couple loose wraps, and that super glue that's still on the thread base will hold it together. Now if you really wanted something very thin, you could stop right there. You know, like if you were trying to imitate sand eels and you didn't want too much bulk on that hook, you could stop right there and just kind of push the bucktail around a little bit and wrap it and call it good. But I want, you know, a fuller profile, and I also know that the bluefish and stripers are going to thin it out for me, so I want to be a little bit thicker than that. But that's the great thing about tying your own. You can tie up whatever it is you need, whatever you want, whatever you're trying to imitate. And it could be big bait, small bait, skinny bait, fat bait, whatever you want. Also, if you're fishing a little bit shallower, you might want a bulkier bucktail grouping on there to kind of slow the bait down and make it rise. And then on the opposite end, if you're fishing deep, maybe you want it a little bit thinner so you could get down a little bit easier. That's the real beauty here, is that you can tie them up whatever you need, whatever you want, and then once you learn how to tie up these dress single hooks or teasers or flags or whatever, it's the same exact procedure for tying up bucktail jigs or any of the others, you know. So once you learn one, you basically learned all the others. Now this little bunch of bucktail has some crystal flash in it from an earlier tie, and you know what? I kind of like that. It might look like a little bit of a lateral line on a bait fish, or maybe it's just a little extra flash. And I'm going to tie it in on the side there. Some people will tie in a little bit of red crystal flash. Maybe it looks like a blood trail. Maybe it just is more enticing to the fish. I don't really know, but just what I had there. And I thought, you know what? I'll just add it in. There's a little bit of a gap there, and I want to fill that in before I finish it off. Kind of size it up, make sure it's not going to be too long. A little bit shorter and square off the ends, make it easier to tie in. Couple loose wraps, and then I'm pretty sure that's how I want it, so I'm just gonna tighten it up. If you weren't sure, you could just spin it around one more time and just make sure that's what you wanted before you locked all those fibers in. I've got a few little strands poking out there. I'm gonna go around with my scissors and kind of clip those off. I see one fiber sticking out at 90 degrees. I can clip that at the end or just leave it long. It won't make any difference to the fish. And it does look a little bit messy now. There's a little bit of loose material there. I'm going to try to catch it with my thread, maybe go back another 1/16 of an inch just to lock in some more of those fibers so they don't get away from me. And then build up the head a little bit. A little more trimming. Still looks a mess, but that's okay at this stage. By the end, it'll be looking pretty good. Good enough for the fish anyway. So here we go. We got the whip finishing tool out again. You make the number 4 just like that, like a sideways 4. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 around. And then I always do it twice to make sure everything's locked down. Or if the first 4 come unwrapped for some reason, usually related to catching fish. And that'll stay very nicely. And now what I'm going to do is just run my fingers through it. You know, this bucktail material, I mean, this is from the back end of a deer. It's not the cleanest stuff, so after I'm done, I always wash my hands with soap and water. I've never had a problem, but yeah, it's probably not the cleanest stuff, even after all these years in a Ziploc bag. So I just wash my hands afterwards. It's no big deal. And that's looking pretty good. A little bit more trimming. But yeah, I think a striper or bluefish will eat that. Trailing behind a plug or a Castmaster or Hopkins, something like that. You know, if you are tying this for the first time and you mess it up, you know, it's pretty easy just to start over. You just take that utility knife out again and cut everything back to square one and try again. It's only going to cost you a few minutes of time. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Pretty even. I like the little bit of crystal flash in it. We'll set that one up to dry too. Alright, I'm going to skip ahead to the end. I did the other 2 smaller hooks in the same exact procedure as the bigger hooks. I always do the bigger ones first, just to make better use of the bucktail material, and the little ones can sometimes get away with just the scraps. Alright, that's it. I got 4 nice single dressed hooks here. You can use these same techniques to make bucktail jigs, teasers, flags, lots of applications for it. And you can save a bunch of money. You can customize whatever it is you want. And it's probably a good thing to know how to do if you fish saltwater at all. Alright, thank you all for watching. I'll list everything in the video description. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!